Welcome to Storytime with Moog. I am Moog, and today we are reading Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, starting with chapter 9. But first, reading updates. I started a new graphic novel. I talked about Firebugs last time, which I finished. It's not a very long book, but I started a new graphic novel called Feeding Ghosts, I think, and it's really good. It's a graphic memoir, and it's about this woman who is first generation American born, and her mom was born in China and like came over with her grandma, and just talking about like the things that they had to live through, like being in China, and how that has just like changed so much, and being like not feeling like part of like Chinese culture, but not really feeling like part of American culture, and just being in this like middle thing, and like the relationship that she has with her mom. And it's a lot of historical things throughout the story. I'm not very far, I'm on page like 60, but throughout the story, she is traveling back to her mom's like hometown and with her mom, and just like rediscovering things and like asking questions. And so we're getting a lot of historical context of the different like wars that China was going through, and also the different like standards for boys and girls, and like how that has just trickled down, like the generational trauma and generational expectations and things like that. And it's very interesting. I'm really enjoying it. The art style is really cool. It's very dark. A lot of it is just like actually dark, like a lot of use of black, and it's just really good, and it feels like there's ghosts in a lot of the panels that are being presented, because it's something that they just have all the time in their life. And there's a couple times when she's talking about like how she is feeling a certain way, and like you can see like the rib cage is like being shown, and then like from the rib cage it looks like these like ghosts, or like this like dark matter is like seeping out of it. So it's just really cool. Um mm, yeah, and that's the progress that I've made since last time chatting. But um today we are continuing on with Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. We're starting with chapter 9, and basically what's happened is we have two of our main characters, Daria and Stepan, and they are married, and Stepan has cheated. And so they are both figuring that out. It is like the immediate aftermath. It is like the next day that she found out, and they confronted it in the morning. He goes off to work, and it's just like, she'll forget about it. Everything will be fine. Like, she obviously loves me. She loves her kids. Like, nothing's gonna happen. And she has the idea of, this is terrible, but I can't really leave. Like, I've known about this for months, and I can't support 5 kids on my own, type of a thing. And I still love him, but he feels like a stranger. So there's that whole dynamic. And then we also have Levin, who is from the country and has just come to the city, and is there to ask permission to marry Kitty. I think that's her name. And I don't remember how. Oh, and then we have Ivanovich. Man, I just don't remember people's names. I don't remember who's who. So we'll hop into it. It's very character driven rather than plot driven. And all of the characters, which I'm super loving, all of them are flawed and have a lot of depth to them, which is really cool. And um, yeah, Tolstoy's a good writer. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? This book is kind of like good. Chapter 9. At 4 o'clock, conscious of his throbbing heart, Levin stepped out of a hired sledge at the zoological gardens and turned along the path to the frozen mounds and the skating ground, knowing that he would certainly find her there, as he had seen the Sherbatskoy's carriage at the entrance. It was a bright, frosty day. Rows of carriages, sledges, drivers, and policemen were standing in the approach. Crowds of well-dressed people, with hats bright in the sun, swarmed with the entrance and along the well-swept little paths between the little houses adorned with carvings in the Russian style. The old curly birches of the garden, all their twigs laden with snow, looked as though freshly decked in sacred vestments. He walked along the path towards the skating ground and kept saying to himself, "You mustn't be excited. You must be calm. What's the matter with you? What do you want? Be quiet, stupid." He conjured his heart. And the more he tried to compose himself, the more breathless he found himself. An acquaintance met him and called him by his name, but Levin did not even recognize him. He went towards the mounds, whence came the clank of the chains of sledges as they slipped down and were dragged up, the rumble of the sliding sledges, and the sounds of merry voices. He walked on a few steps, and the skating ground lay open before his eyes, and at once, amidst all the skaters, he knew her. He knew she was there by the rapture and the terror that seized on his heart. She was standing talking to a lady at the opposite end of the ground. There was apparently nothing striking either in her dress or her attitude. But for Levin, she was as easy to find in that crowd as a rose among nettles. Everything was made bright by her. She was the smile that shed light on all round her. Is it possible I can go over there on the ice? Go up to her? He thought. The place where she stood seemed to him a holy shrine, unapproachable. And there was one moment when he was almost retreating, so overwhelmed was he with terror. He had to make an effort to master himself and to remind himself that people of all sorts were moving about her, and that he, too, might come there to skate. He walked down for a long while, avoiding looking at her as at the sun, but seeing her as one does the sun without looking. On that day of the week and at that time of day, people of one set, all acquainted with one another, used to meet on the ice. There were crack skaters there, showing off their skill, and learners clinging to chairs with timid, awkward movements, boys and elderly people skating with hygienic motives. They seemed to Levin an elect band of blissful beings because they were here, near her. All the skaters, it seemed, with perfect self-possession, skated towards her, skated by her, even spoke to her, and were happy, quite apart from her, enjoying the capital ice and the fine weather. Nikolai Sherbatskoy, Kitty's cousin, in a short jacket and tight trousers, was sitting on a garden seat with his skates on. Seeing Levin, he shouted to him. "Ah, the first skater in Russia. Been here long? First-rate ice. Do put your skates on." "I haven't got my skates," Levin answered, marveling at this boldness and ease in her presence, and not for 1 second losing sight of her, though he did not look at her. He felt as though the sun were coming near him. She was in a corner, and turning out her slender feet in their high boots with obvious timidity, she skated towards him. A boy in Russian dress, desperately waving his arms and bowed down to the ground, overtook her. She skated a little uncertainly, taking her hands out of the little muff that hung on a cord. She held them ready for emergency, and looking towards Levin, whom she had recognized, she smiled at him and at her own fears. When she had got round the turn, she gave herself a push off with one foot and skated straight up to Shtcherbatskoy. Clutching at his arm, she nodded, smiling to Levin. She was more splendid than he had imagined her. When he thought of her, he could call up a vivid picture of her to himself, especially the charm of that little fair head, so freely set on the shapely, girlish shoulders, and so full of childish brightness and good humor. The childishness of her expression, together with the delicate beauty of her figure, made up her special charm, and that he fully realized. But what always struck him in her as something unlooked for was the expression of her eyes, soft, serene, truthful, and above all, her smile, which always transported Levin to an enchanted world where he felt himself softened and tender as he remembered himself in some days of his early childhood. "Have you been here long?" she said, giving him her hand. "Thank you," she added, as he picked up the handkerchief that had fallen out of her muff. I've not long. Yesterday. I mean today. I arrived," answered Levin, in his emotion not at once understanding her question. "I was meaning to come and see you," he said, and then, recollecting with what intention he was trying to see her, he was promptly overcome with confusion, and blushed. "I didn't know you could skate, and skate so well." She looked at him earnestly, as though wishing to make out the cause of his confusion. "Your praise is worth having. The tradition is kept up here that you are in the best of skaters," she said, with her little black-gloved hand brushing a grain of hoarfrost off her muff. "Yes, I used once to skate with passion. I wanted to reach perfection." "You do everything with passion, I think," she said, smiling. "I should so like to see how you skate. Put on skates, and let us skate together." "Skate together? Can that be possible?" thought Levin, gazing at her. "I'll put them on directly," he said, and he went off to get skates. "It's a long while since we've seen you here, sir," said the attendant, supporting his foot and screwing on the heel of the skate. "Except you, there's none of the gentlemen first-rate skaters. Will that be all right?" asked he, tightening the strap. "Oh, yes, make haste, please," answered Levin, with difficulty restraining the smile of rapture which would overspread his face. Yes, he thought, this now is life. This is happiness. Together, she said. Let us skate together. Speak to her now? But that's just why I'm afraid to speak, because I'm happy now. Happy in hope, anyway. And then? But I must. I must. Away with this weakness. Levin rose to his feet, shook off his overcoat, and scurrying over the rough ice round the hut, came out on the smooth ice and skated without effort, as it were, by simple exercise of will, increasing and slackening speed and turning his course. He approached with timidity, but again her smile reassured him. She gave him her hand, and they set off side by side, going faster and faster, and the more rapidly they moved, the more tightly she grasped his hand. "With you, I should soon learn. I somehow feel confidence in you," she said to him. "And I have confidence in myself when you are leaning on me," he said, but was at once panic-stricken at what he had said, and blushed. And indeed, no sooner had he uttered these words when all at once, like the sun going behind a cloud, her face lost all its friendliness, and Levin detected the familiar change in her expression that denoted the working of thought. A crease showed on her smooth brow. "Is there anything troubling you? Though I've no right to ask such a question," he added hurriedly. "Oh, why so? No, I have nothing to trouble me," she responded coldly, and she added immediately, "You haven't seen Mademoiselle Linen, have you?" "Not yet." "Go and speak to her. She likes you so much." "What's wrong? I have offended her. Lord help me," thought Levin, and he flew towards the old Frenchwoman with the gray ringlets, who was sitting on a bench. Smiling and showing her false teeth, she greeted him as an old friend. "Yes, you see we're growing up," she said to him, glancing towards Kitty. "Growing up. Tiny Bear has grown big now," pursued the Frenchwoman, laughing, and she reminded him of his joke about the 3 young ladies whom he had compared to the 3 bears in the English nursery tale. "Do you remember that's what you used to call them?" He remembered absolutely nothing, but she had been laughing at the joke for 10 years now, and was fond of it. "Now, go skate, go and skate. Our Kitty has learned to skate nicely, hasn't she?" When Levin darted up to Kitty, her face was no longer stern. Her eyes looked at him with the same sincerity and friendliness, but Levin fancied that in her friendliness there was a certain note of deliberate composure, and he felt depressed. After talking a little of her old governess and her peculiarities, she questioned him about his life. "Surely, you must be dull in the country in the winter, aren't you?" she said. "No, I'm not dull. I'm very busy," he said, feeling that she was holding him in check by her composed tone, which he would not have the force to break through, just as it had been at the beginning of the winter. "Are you going to stay in town long?" Kitty questioned him. "I don't know," he answered, not thinking of what he was saying. The thought that if he were held in check by her tone of quiet friendliness, he would end by going back again without deciding anything came into his mind, and he resolved to make a struggle against it. "How is it you don't know?" "I don't know. It depends on you," he said, and was immediately horror-stricken at his own words. Whether it was that she had heard his words, or that she did not want to hear them, she made a sort of stumble, twice struck out, and hurriedly skated away from him. She skated up to Mademoiselle Linen, said something to her, and went towards the pavilion where the ladies took off their skates. "My God, what have I done? Merciful God, help me, guide me," said Levin, praying inwardly, and at the same time feeling a need of violent exercise. He skated about, describing inner and outer circles. At that moment, one of the young men, the best of the skaters of the day, came out of the coffee house in his skates with a cigarette in his mouth. Taking a run, he dashed down the steps in his skates, crashing and bounding up and down. He flew down, and without even changing the position of his hands, skated away over the ice. "Oh, that's a new trick," said Levin, and he promptly ran up to the top to do his new trick. "Don't break your neck. It needs practice," Nikolai Sherbatskoy shouted after him. Levin went to the steps, took a run from above as best he could, and dashed down, preserving his balance in his unwonted movement with his hands. On the last step he stumbled, but barely touching the ice with his hand, with a violent effort recovered himself and skated off, laughing. "How splendid! How nice he is!" Kitty was thinking at that time, as she came out of the pavilion with Mademoiselle Linen, and looked towards him with a smile of quiet affection, as though he were a favorite brother. And can it be my fault? Can I have done anything wrong? They talk of flirtation. I know it's not he that I love, but still I am happy with him. And he's so jolly. Only, why did he say that? She mused. Catching sight of Kitty going away and her mother meeting her at the steps, Levin flushed from his rapid exercise, stood still, and pondered a minute. He took off his skates and overtook the mother and daughter at the entrance of the gardens. Delighted to see you, said Princess Shtcherbatskaya. On Thursday we are home, as always. Today, then? We shall be pleased to see you, the princess said stiffly. This stiffness hurt Kitty, and she could not resist the desire to smooth over her mother's coldness. She turned her head and with a smile said, "Goodbye, till this evening." At that moment, Stepan Arkadyevitch, his hat cocked on one side with beaming face and eyes, strode into the garden like a conquering hero. But as he approached his mother-in-law, he responded in a mournful and crestfallen tone to her inquiries about Dolly's health. After a little subdued and dejected conversation with his mother-in-law, he threw out his chest again and put his arm in Levin's. "Well, shall we set off?" he asked. "I've been thinking about you all this time, and I'm very, very glad you've come," he said, looking him in the face with a significant air. "Yes, come along," answered Levin in ecstasy, hearing unceasingly the sound of that voice saying, "Goodbye, till this evening," and seeing the smile with which it was said. "To the England or the Hermitage? I don't mind which." "All right, then. The England," said Stepan Arkadyevitch, selecting that restaurant because he owed more there than at the Hermitage, and consequently considered it mean to avoid it. "Have you got a sledge? That's first rate, for I sent my carriage home." The friends hardly spoke all the way. Levin was wondering what that change in Kitty's expression had meant, and alternately assuring himself that there was hope, and falling into despair, seeing clearly that his hopes were insane, and yet all the while he felt himself quite another man, utterly unlike what he had seen, what he had been before her smile and those words, "Goodbye till this evening." Stepan Arkadyevitch was absorbed during the drive into composing the menu of the dinner. "You like turbot, don't you?" he said to Levin as they were arriving. "Huh?" responded Levin. "Turbot? Yes, I'm awfully fond of turbot." End of chapter 9. Okay, chapter 9 it's a cute little chapter. We have Levin, who is just so starstruck by Kitty, and he wants to marry Kitty. This is why he has come into the city from the country, and she's there skating, and he's not amazing, or she's not amazing at skating, and he is. And so they're having this moment where they're skating. She like comes up to him and is like, "Oh, let's skate together," and he's like, "She wants to skate together?" So he goes and gets skates, and the assistant, the skate man, I guess, like recognizes him and is just like, "Oh, like haven't seen you in a while. How are you?" Like all of these things, and like commenting on the different skaters and things like that. And so he goes out there, and she is like leaning on him a little bit because she's not amazing at skating, but he is. And so they have this moment of like anytime he's saying something that like is just a little bit suggestive of like how he's feeling, he's like, "Oh no, what have I done? Oh no, I can't believe I just said that. Oh my gosh, she's gonna think I'm so stupid." And it's just so, so cute. And there's this mademoiselle who's on the sideline just watching all of this happen and just being part of the moment, and like talking to them independently, which is fun. And it's just really cute. And then at the end we get Stepan Arkadyevitch, and he's like, "Ah, Levin, like let's go eat," because they're going to have a meeting to discuss things. Very exciting. All right. Chapter 10. When Levin went into the restaurant with Oblonsky, he could not help noticing a certain peculiarity of expression, as it were, a restrained radiance about the face and whole figure of Stepan Arkadyevitch. Oblonsky took off his overcoat, and with his hat over one ear, walked into the dining room, giving directions to the Tartar waiters, who were clustered about him in evening coats, bearing napkins. Bowing to right and left to the people he met, and here as everywhere joyously greeting acquaintances, he went up to the sideboard for a preliminary appetizer of fish and vodka, and said to the painted French woman decked in ribbons, lace, and ringlets behind the counter, something so amusing that even that Frenchwoman was moving to genuine laughter. Levin, for his part, refrained from taking any vodka, simply because he felt such a loathing of that Frenchwoman, all made up. It seemed of false hair, poudre de riz, and vinaigre de toilette. He made haste to move away from her, as from a dirty place. His whole soul was filled with memories of Kitty, and there was a smile of triumph and happiness shining in his eyes. "This way, Your Excellency, please. Your Excellency won't be disturbed here," said a particularly pertinacious, white-headed old Tartar, with immense hips and coat-tails gaping widely behind. "Walk in, Your Excellency," he said to Levin, by way of showing his respect to Stepan Arkadyevitch, being attentive to his guest as well. Instantly flinging a fresh cloth over the round table under the bronze chandelier, though it already had a tablecloth on it, he pushed up velvet chairs and came to a standstill before Stepan Arkadyevitch with a napkin and a bill of fare in his hands, awaiting his commands. "If you prefer it, Your Excellency, a private room will be free directly. Prince Golestin with a lady. Fresh oysters have come in." "Oh, oysters." Stepan Arkadyevitch became thoughtful. "How if we were to change our program, Levin?" he said, keeping his finger on the bill of fare, and his face expressed serious hesitation. "Are the oysters good? Mind now." "They're Flensburg, Your Excellency. We've no Ostend." "Flensburg will do. But are they fresh?" "Only arrived yesterday." "Well then, how if we were to begin with oysters and so change the whole program, eh?" "It's all the same to me. I should like cabbage soup and porridge better than anything, but of course there's nothing like that here." "Porridge à la Russe, Your Honor would like," said the Tartar, bending down to Levin, like a nurse speaking to a child. "No, joking apart, whatever you choose is sure to be good. I've been skating, and I'm hungry. And don't imagine," he said, detecting a look of dissatisfaction on Oblonsky's face, "that I shan't appreciate your choice. I am fond of good things." "I should hope so. After all, it's one of the pleasures of life," said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "Well then, my friend, give us 2, or better say 3 dozen oysters. Clear soup with vegetables." "Printanier," prompted the Tartar. But Stepan Arkadyevitch apparently did not care to allow him the satisfaction of giving the French names of the dishes. "With vegetables in it, you know. Then turbot with thick sauce, then roast beef, and mind it's good. Yes, and capons, perhaps, and then sweets." The Tartar, recollecting that it was Stepan Arkadyevitch's way not to call the dishes by the name in the French bill of fare, did not repeat them after him, but could not resist rehearsing the whole menu to himself according to the bill. And then he says everything in French. And then instantly, As though worked by springs, laying down one bound bill of fare, he took up another, the list of wines, and submitted it to Stepan Arkadyevitch. "What shall we drink?" "What do you like? Only not too much. Champagne," said Levin. "What? To start with?" "You're right, though, I dare say. Do you like the white seal?" "Cachet blanc," prompted the Tartar. "Very well, then. Give us that brand with the oysters, and then we'll see." "Yes, sir. And what table wine?" "You can give us Nuit. No, better, the classic Chablis." "Yes, sir. And your cheese, your Excellency?" "Oh, yes, Parmesan. Or would you like another?" "No, it's all the same to me," said Levin, unable to suppress a smile. And then the Tartar ran off with flying coat-tails, and in 5 minutes darted in with a dish of opened oysters on mother-of-pearl shells and a bottle between his fingers. Stepan Arkadyevitch crushed the starchy napkin, tucked it into his waistcoat, and settling his arms comfortably, started on the oysters. "Not bad," he said, stripping the oyster from the pearly shell with a silver fork, and swallowing them one after another. "Not bad," he repeated, turning his dewy, brilliant eyes from Levin to the Tartar. Levin ate the oysters indeed, though white bread and cheese would have pleased him better. But he was admiring Oblonsky. Even the Tartar, uncorking the bottle and pouring the sparkling wine into the delicate glasses, glanced at Stepan Arkadyevitch and settled his white cravat with a perceptible smile of satisfaction. "You don't care much for oysters, do you?" said Stepan Arkadyevitch, emptying his wineglass. "Or you're worried about something, eh?" He wanted Levin to be in good spirits. But it was not that Levin was not in good spirits. He was ill at ease. With what he had in his soul, he felt sore and uncomfortable in the restaurant, in the midst of private rooms where men were dining with ladies, in all this fuss and bustle, the surroundings of bronzes, looking-glasses, gas, and waiters. All of it was offensive to him. He was afraid of sullying what his soul was brimful of. "I? Yes, I am. But besides, all this bothers me," he said. "You can't conceive how odd it all seems to a country person like me, as odd as that gentleman's nails as I saw at your place." "Yes, I saw how much interested you were in poor Greenwich's nails," said Stepan Arkadyevitch, laughing. "It's too much for me," responding Levin. "Do try, now, and put yourself in my place. Take the point of view of a country person. We in the country try to bring our hands into such a state as will be most convenient for working with. So we cut our nails. Sometimes we turn up our sleeves. And here people purposely let their nails grow, as long as they will, and link on small saucers by way of studs, so that they can do nothing with their hands." Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled happily. "Oh yes, that's just a sign that he has no need to do coarse work. His work is with the mind. Maybe, but it's odd to me. Just at this moment it seems odd to me that we country folks try to get our meals over as soon as we can, so as to be ready for our work, while here are we, trying to drag out our meal as long as possible, and with that object eating oysters. Why—" "Of course," objected Stepan Arkadyevitch, "but that's just the aim of civilization, to make everything a source of enjoyment. Well, if that's its aim, I'd rather be a savage." "And so you are a savage. All you Levins are savages." Levin sighed. He remembered his brother Nikolai, and felt ashamed and sore. He scowled, but Oblonsky began speaking of a subject which at once drew his attention. "Oh, I say, are you going tonight to our people? The Shtcherbatskoys, I mean?" he said, his eyes sparkling significantly as he pushed away the empty, rough shells and drew the cheese toward him. Yes, I shall surely go, replied Levin, though I fancied the princess was not very warm in her invitation. What nonsense! That's her manner. Come, boy, the soup. That's her manner. Grande dame, said Stepan Arkadyevitch. I'm coming too, but I have to go to the Countess Bonina's rehearsal. Come, isn't it true that you're a savage? How do you explain the sudden way in which you vanished from Moscow? The Shtcherbatskoys were continually asking me about you, as though I ought to know. The only thing I know is that you always do what no one else does. Yes, said Levin, slowly and with emotion. You're right. I am a savage. Only my savageness is not in having gone away, but in coming now. Now I have come. Oh, what a lucky fellow you are, broke in Stepan Arkadyevitch, looking into Levin's eyes. Why? I know a gallant steed by tokens sure, and by his eyes I know a youth in love, declaimed Stepan Arkadyevitch. Everything is before you. Why is it over for you already? No, not over exactly, but the future is yours and the present is mine. And the present, well, it's not all that it might be. How so? Things go wrong. But I don't want to talk of myself, and besides, I can't explain it all. And Stepan Arkadyevitch. Well, why have you come to Moscow, then? Hi, take away, he called to the Tartar. You guess, responded Levin, his eyes like deep wells of light fixed on Stepan Arkadyevitch. I guess, but I can't be the first to talk about it. You can see by that whether I guess right or wrong, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, gazing at Levin with a subtle smile. Well, and what have you to say to me? Said Levin in a quivering voice, feeling that all the muscles of his face were quivering too. How do you look at that question? Stepan Arkadyevitch slowly emptied his glass of Chablis, never taking his eyes off Levin. I, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, there's nothing I desire so much as that. Nothing. I would be the best thing that could be, or it would be the best thing that could be. But you're not making a mistake. You know what you're speaking of? Said Levin, piercing him with his eyes. You think it's possible? I think it's possible. Why not possible? No. Do you really think it's possible? No, tell me all you think. Oh, but if refusal's in store for me, indeed, I feel sure. Why should you think that? Said Stepan Arkadyevitch, smiling at his excitement. It seems so to me sometimes that will be awful for me, and for her too. Oh, well. Anyway, there's nothing awful in it for a girl. Every girl's proud for an offer. Yes, every girl, but not she. Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled. So he well knew that feeling of Levin's, that for him all the girls in the world were divided into two classes. One class, all the girls in the world except her, and those girls with all sorts of human weaknesses, and very ordinary girls. The other class, she alone, having no weaknesses of any sort, and higher than all humanity. Stay. Take some sauce, he said, holding back Levin's hand as it pushed away the sauce. Levin obediently helped himself to sauce, but would not let Stepan Arkadyevitch go on with his dinner. No, stop a minute, he said. You must understand that it's a question of life and death for me. I have never spoken to anyone of this, and there's no one I could speak of it to except you. You know we're utterly unlike each other, different tastes and views and everything, but I know you're fond of me and understand me, and that's why I like you awfully. But for God's sake, be quite straightforward with me. I tell you what I think, said Stepan Arkadyevitch, smiling, but I'll say more. My wife is a wonderful woman. Stepan Arkadyevitch sighed, remembering his position with his wife, and, after a moment's silence, resumed. She has a gift of foreseeing things. She sees right through people. But that's not all. She knows what will come to pass, especially in the way of marriages. She foretold, for instance, that Princess Shahovskaya would marry Brentelin. No one would believe it, but it came to pass, and she's on your side. How do you mean? It's not only that she likes you, she says that Kitty is certain it will to be your wife. At these words, Levin's face suddenly lighted up with a smile not far from tears of emotion. She says that? Cried Levin. I always said she was exquisite, your wife. There, that's enough. Enough said about that, he said, getting up from his seat. All right, but do sit down. But Levin could not sit down. He walked from his firm tread twice up and down the little cage of a room, blinked his eyelids that his tears might not fall, and only then sat down to the table. You must understand, said he. It's not love. I've been in love, but it's not that. It's not my feeling, but a sort of force outside me has taken possession of me. I went away, you see, because I made up my mind that it could never be, you understand, as a happiness that does not come on earth. But I've struggled with myself. I see there's no living without it, and it must be settled. What did you go away for? Oh, stop a moment. The thoughts that come crowding on one, the questions one must ask oneself. Listen, you can't imagine what you've done for me by what you said. I'm so happy that I've become positively hateful. I've forgotten everything. I heard today that my brother, Nikolay, you know, he's here. I had even forgotten him. It seems to me that he's happy too. It's a sort of madness. But one thing's awful. Here, you've been married. You know the feeling. It's awful that we, old, with a past, not of love, but of sins, are brought on, all at once, so near to a creature pure and innocent. It's loathsome. And that's why one can't help feeling oneself unworthy. Ah, well, you've not many sins on your conscience. Alas, all the same, said Levin. When with loathing I go over my life, I shudder and curse and bitterly regret it. Yes. What would you have? The world's made so, said Stepan Arkadyevitch. The one comfort is like that prayer, which I always liked. Forgive me not according to my unworthiness, but according to thy loving kindness. That's the only way she can forgive me. End of chapter 10. Okay, so chapter 10, we have Stepan Arkadyevitch and Levin who are out to dinner. And I love the ordering. It's almost reminds me of, oh, what's that movie? Oh no, what's that movie? It's the really cute movie. When Harry Met Sally. It reminds me of that. When he's like, I love that it takes you 10 minutes to order a sandwich. Like, that's sort of what it feels like because he just, like, Stepan Arkadyevitch just is taking the reins of ordering and is just, like, asking all of these questions of the waiter, and the waiter is just answering him in French to be like, oh, well, you want the soba de whatever. And Stepan is like, yeah, I want the clear soup with the vegetables. We want 3 dozen oysters. We want champagne. No, Chablis, and we want this. And it's great. I love that moment. And I feel like I want to have a command of food and presence to be able to do that, but I feel like I'm definitely more Levin in this category where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just take over, please. Tell me what is delicious. I will trust you. Please just order for me because I would just be perfectly happy with a sandwich. So I thought that that was pretty funny. And So Stepan and Levin are talking about, like, well, why are you here? Like, what did you have to tell me? And Stepan knows that something is going on with Levin, and it comes out that the real reason why Levin is here is because of Kitty, and he is just worried that she's going to say no because she is in a different class than all other women and all of these things. And Stepan is like, oh, I was once where you were. I get it. And like think tells him that there's no possibility that she would ever deny him or anything like that. And that even his wife Daria thinks that Kitty will say yes. And Levin is just like so excited and overwhelmed by this knowledge that he just like stands up, and Stefan is like, please sit. And he's like, I can't do this. And then he starts like pacing and then comes and sits back down, and he's like, I am so excited that I'm so happy that I'm hateful. And so like that's kind of how it ended, is now they both know, like it's all out in the open, that Levin wants to be with Kitty, and that Stepan and his wife Daria think that it is going to happen. And that's it. It's nice. I love the scenes because they do feel just so real. And I feel like I'm going to say this after every chapter. It's just very real and something that like would happen. I love it. Chapter 11. Levin emptied his glass and they were silent for a while. There's one other thing I ought to tell you. Do you know Vronsky? Stepan Arkadyevich asked Levin. No, I don't. Why do you ask? "Mm, give us another bottle," Stepan Arkadyevich directed the Tartar, who was filling up their glasses and fidgeting round them just when he was not wanted. Why, you ought to know Vronsky is that he's one of your rivals. Who's Vronsky? Said Levin, and his face was suddenly transformed from the look of childlike ecstasy which Oblonsky had just been admiring to an angry and unpleasant expression. Vronsky is one of the sons of Count Kirill Ivanovich Vronsky, and one of the finest specimens of the gilded youth of Petersburg. I made his acquaintance in Tver, and when I was there on official business, and he came there for a levy of recruits. Fearfully rich, handsome, great connections, an aide-de-camp, and with all that, a very nice, good-natured fellow. But he's more than simply a good-natured fellow, as I've found out. He's a cultivated man, too, and very intelligent. He's a man who'll make his mark. Levin scowled and was dumb. Well, he turned up here soon after you'd gone, and as I can see, he's over head and ears in love with Kitty, and you know that her mother— Excuse me, but I know nothing, said Levin, frowning gloomily, and immediately he recollected his brother Nikolai and how hateful he was to have been able to forget him. You wait a bit, said Stepan Arkadyevich, smiling and touching his hand. I've told you what I know, and I repeat that in this delicate and tender matter, as far as one can conjecture, I believe the chances are in your favor. Levin dropped back in his chair. His face was pale. But I would advise you to settle the thing as soon as may be, pursued Oblonsky, filling up his glass. No, thanks. I can't drink any more, said Levin, pushing away his glass. I shall be drunk. Come. Tell me, how are you getting on? He went on, obviously anxious to change the conversation. One word more. In any case, I advise you to settle the question soon. Tonight, I don't advise you to speak, said Stepan Arkadyevich. Go round tomorrow morning, make an offer in due form, and God bless you. Oh, do you still think of coming to me for some shooting? Come next spring, do, said Levin. Now his whole soul was full of remorse that he had begun this conversation with Stepan Arkadyevich. A feeling such as his was profaned by talk of the rivalry of some Petersburg officer and the suppositions and the counsels of Stepan Arkadyevitch. Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled. He knew what was passing in Levin's soul. "I'll come someday," he said. "But women, my boy, they're the pivot everything turns upon. Things are in a bad way with me. Very bad. And it's all through women. Tell me frankly now," he pursued, picking up a cigar and taking one hand on his glass. "Give me your advice." "Why, what is it?" "I tell you. Suppose you're married and you love your wife, but you're fascinated by another woman. Excuse me, but I'm absolutely unable to comprehend how, just as I can't comprehend how I could now, after my dinner, go straight to a baker's shop and steal a roll." Stepan Arkadyevitch's eyes sparkled more than usual. "Why not? A roll will sometimes smell so good, one can't resist it. Himmlisch ist's, wenn ich bezwungen meine irdische Begier, aber doch wenn's nicht gelungen hat ich auch recht hübsch Pläsier." As he said this, Stepan Arkadyevitch smiled subtly. Levin, too, could not help smiling. "Yes, but joking apart," resumed Stepan Arkadyevitch, "you must understand that the woman is a sweet, gentle, loving creature, poor and lonely, and has sacrificed everything. Now, when the thing's done, don't you see? Can one possibly cast her off? Even supposing one parts from her so as not to break up one's family. Still, can one help feeling for her, setting her on her feet, softening her lot? Well, you must excuse me there. You know to me all women are divided into two classes. At least no, truer to say, there are women and there are... Never seen exquisite fallen beings, and I never shall see them. But such creatures as that painted French woman at the counter with the ringlets are vermin to my mind, and all fallen women are the same." "But the Magdalene?" "Oh, drop that. Christ would never have said those words if he had known how they would be abused. Of all the gospel, those words are the only ones remembered. However, I'm not saying so much what I think as what I feel. I have a loathing for fallen women. You're afraid of spiders, and I of these vermin. Most likely, you've not made a study of spiders and don't know their character. And so it is with me." "It's very well for you to talk like that, and it's very much like that gentleman in Dickens who used to fling all difficult questions over his right shoulder. But to deny the facts is no answer. What's to be done? You tell me that. What's to be done? Your wife gets older, while you're full of life. Before you've time to look around, you feel that you can't love your wife with love, however much you may esteem her. And then, all at once, love turns up, and you're done for." "Done for?" Stepan Arkadyevitch said with weary despair. Levin half smiled. "Yes, you're done for," resumed Oblonsky. "But what's to be done? Don't steal rolls." Stepan Arkadyevitch laughed outright. "Oh, moralist. But you must understand there are two women. One insists only on her rights, and those rights are your love, which you can't give her, and the other sacrifices everything for you and asks for nothing. What are you to do? How are you to act? There's a fearful tragedy in it." "If you care for my profession of faith as regards that, I'll tell you that I don't believe there was any tragedy about it, and this is why. To my mind, love, both the sorts of love which you remember Plato defines in his Banquet, served as the test of men. Some men only understand one sort, and some only the other, and those who only know the non-Platonic love have no need to talk of tragedy. In this love there can be no sort of tragedy. I'm much obliged for the gratification. My humble respects. That's all the tragedy. And in platonic love, there can be no tragedy, because in that love all is clear and pure, because in that instant Levin recollected his own sins and the inner conflict he had lived through, and he added unexpectedly, "But perhaps you're right. Very likely. I don't know. I don't know." "It's this, don't you see?" said Stepan Arkadyevitch. "You're very much all one piece. That's your strong point, and you're failing. You have a character that's all of a piece, and you want the whole of life to be a piece too. But that's not how it is. You despise public official work because you want the reality to be invariably corresponding all the while with the aim, and that's not how it is. You want a man's work, too, always to have a defined aim, and love and family life always to be undivided, and that's not how it is. All the variety, all the charm, all the beauty of life is made up of light and shadow." Levin sighed and made no reply. He was thinking of his own affairs and did not hear Oblonsky. And suddenly both of them felt that, though they were friends, though they had been dining and drinking together, which should have drawn them closer, yet each was thinking only of his own affairs, and they had nothing to do with one another. Oblonsky had more than once experienced this extreme sense of aloofness, instead of intimacy, coming on after dinner, and he knew what to do in such cases. "Bill," he called, and he went into the next room, where he promptly came across an aide-de-camp of his acquaintance and dropped into conversation with him about an actress and her protector. And at once, in the conversation with the aide-de-camp, Oblonsky had a sense of relaxation and relief always put him to too great a mental and spiritual strain. When the Tartar appeared with a bill for 26 rubles and odd kopecks, besides a tip for himself, Levin, who would another time have been horrified, like anyone from the country, at this share of 14 rubles, did not notice it, paid, and set off homewards to dress and go to Shtcherbatskoy's, there to decide his fate. End of chapter 11. Okay, so in chapter 10, we had Levin describing, like, talking about his problems that he wanted to talk about. And then in this chapter, we have, what's his name? Stepan talking about his issues, like his relationship issues, and trying to sort of make it like to get Levin on his side, and it's not really working. And he's just like, but like there's two like different types of love. Like, you marry somebody and you spend a long time with them and you love them very much, but then she gets old and you're still full of life. So like, it's like when you go out to dinner and then you like eat everything, and then afterwards you pass a bakery and you're like, that roll, and and Levin is like, don't take the roll. What are you talking about? And Stefan is like, but sometimes the roll smells really good and it's hard to bypass. And Levin is like, what? And he's trying to like pass judgment, and then realizes like the things that he has done and he has experienced, and is like, well, maybe I'm not the right person to give advice. And so they end the dinner both just like absorbed in their own issues and not really able to help the other person, and not really feel fully invested in the other person's things, their own web of things, because they are just so absorbed in what is going on in their own life. All right. Chapter 12. The young Princess Kitty Shcherbatskaya was 18. It was the first winter when she had been out in the world. Her success in society had been greater than that of either of her elder sisters, and greater even than her mother had anticipated, to say nothing of the young men who danced at the Moscow balls being almost all in love with Kitty. Two serious suitors had already this first winter made their appearance: Levin, and immediately after his departure, Count Vronsky. Levin's appearance at the beginning of the winter, his frequent visits, and evident love for Kitty had led to the first serious conversation between Kitty's parents as to her future, and to disputes between them. The prince was on Levin's side. He said he wished for nothing better for Kitty. The princess, for her part, going round the question in the manner peculiar to women, maintained that Kitty was too young, that Levin had done nothing to prove that he had serious intentions, that Kitty felt no attraction to him, and other side issues. But she did not state the principal point, which was that she looked for a better match for her daughter, and that Levin was not to her liking, and she did not understand him. When Levin had abruptly departed, the princess was delighted, and said to her husband triumphantly, "You see, I was right." When Vronsky appeared on the scene, she was still more delighted, confirmed in her opinion that Kitty was to make not simply a good, but a brilliant match. In the mother's eyes, there could be no comparison between Vronsky and Levin. She disliked in Levin his strange and uncompromising opinions of his shyness in society, founded, as she opposed, on his pride and his odd sort of life, as she considered it, absorbed in cattle and peasants. She did not very much like it that he, who was in love with her daughter, had kept coming to the house for 6 weeks, as though he were waiting for something, inspecting, as though he were afraid he might be doing them too great an honor by making an offer, and did not realize that a man who continually visits at a house where there is a young unmarried girl is bound to make his intentions clear. And suddenly, without doing so, he disappeared. "It's as well he's not attractive enough for Kitty to have fallen in love with him," thought the mother. Vronsky satisfied all the mother's desires. Very wealthy, clever, of aristocratic family, on the high road to a brilliant career in the army and at court, and a fascinating man. Nothing better could be wished for. Vronsky openly flirted with Kitty at balls, danced with her, and came continually to the house. Consequently, there could be no doubt of the seriousness of his intentions. But, in spite of that, the mother had spent the whole of that winter in a state of terrible anxiety and agitation. Princess Shtcherbatskaya had herself been married 30 years ago, her aunt arranging the match. Her husband, about whom everything was well known beforehand, had come, looked at his future bride, and been looked at. The matchmaking aunt had ascertained and communicated their mutual impression. That impression had been favorable. Afterwards, on a day fixed beforehand, the expected offer was made to her parents and accepted. All had passed very simply and easily, so it seemed, at least, to the princess. But over her own daughter she had felt how far from simple and easy is the business, apparently so commonplace, of marrying off one's daughter. The panics that had been lived through, the thoughts that had been brooded over, the money that had been wasted, and the disputes with her husband over marrying the 2 elder girls, Daria and Natalia. Now, since the youngest had come out, she was going through the same terrors, the same doubts, and still more violent quarrels with her husband than she had over the elder girls. The old prince, like all fathers indeed, was exceedingly punctilious on the score of the honor and reputation of his daughters. He was irrationally jealous over his daughters, especially over Kitty, who was his favorite. At every turn, he had scenes with the princess for compromising her daughter. The princess had grown accustomed to this already with her other daughters, but now she felt that there was more ground for the prince's touchiness. She saw that of late years much was changed in the manner of society, that a mother's duties had become still more difficult. She saw that girls of Kitty's age formed some sort of clubs, went to some sort of lectures, mixed freely in men's society, drove about the streets alone. Many of them did not curtsy, and what was the most important thing, all the girls were firmly convinced that to choose their husbands was their own affairs and not their parents'. Marriages aren't made nowadays as they used to be, was thought and said by all these young girls, and even by their elders. But how marriages were made now, the princess could not learn from anyone. The French fashion of the parents arranging their children's future was not accepted, it was condemned. The English fashion of the complete independence of girls was also not accepted, and not possible in Russian society. The Russian fashion of matchmaking by the offices of intermediate persons was for some reason considered unseemly. It was ridiculed by everyone, and by the princess herself. But how girls were to be married, and how parents were to marry them, no one knew. Everyone with whom the princess had chanced to discuss the matter said the same thing. Mercy on us, it's high time in our day to cast off all that old-fashioned business. It's the young people have to marry and not their parents, and so we ought to leave the young people to arrange it as they choose. It was very easy for anyone to say that who had no daughters, but the princess realized that in the process of getting to know each other, her daughter might fall in love, and fall in love with someone who did not care to marry her, or who was quite unfit to be her husband. And much however much it was instilled into the princess that in our times young people ought to arrange their lives for themselves, she was unable to believe it, just as she would have been unable to believe that, at any time whatever, the most suitable playthings for children 5 years old ought to be loaded pistols. And so the princess was more uneasy over Kitty than she had been over her elder sisters. Now she was afraid that Vronsky might confine himself to simply flirting with her daughter. She saw that her daughter was in love with him, but tried to comfort herself with the thought that he was an honorable man and would not do this. But at the same time, she knew how easy it is, with the freedom of manners of today, to turn a girl's head, and how lightly men generally regard such a crime. The week before, Kitty had told her mother of a conversation she had with Vronsky during a mazurka. This conversation had partly reassured the princess, but perfectly at ease she could not be. Vronsky had told Kitty that both he and his brother were so used to obeying their mothers that they never made up their minds to any important undertaking without consulting her. And just now, I am impatiently awaiting my mother's arrival from Petersburg, as peculiarly fortunate, he told her. Kitty had repeated this without attaching any significance to the words, but her mother saw them in a different light. She knew that the old lady was expected from day to day, that she would be pleased at her son's choice, and she felt it strange that he should not make his offer through fear of vexing his mother. However, she was so anxious for the marriage itself, and still more for relief from her fears, that she believed it was so. Bitter as it was for the princess to see the unhappiness of her eldest daughter, Dolly, on the point of leaving her husband, her anxiety over the decision of her youngest daughter's fate engrossed all her feelings. Today, with Levin's reappearance, a fresh source of anxiety arose. She was afraid that her daughter, who had at one time, as she fancied, a feeling for Levin, might, from extreme sense of honor, refuse Vronsky, and that Levin's arrival might generally complicate and delay the affair so near being concluded. "Why has he been here long?" the princess asked about Levin as they returned home. "He came today, Mamma." "There's one thing I want to say," began the princess, and from her serious and alert face, Kitty guessed what it would be. "Mamma," she said, flushing hotly and turning quickly to her. "Please, please don't say anything about that. I know all about it." She wished for what her mother wished for, but the motives of her mother's wishes wounded her. "I only want to say that to raise hopes, Mamma, darling, for goodness sake, don't talk about it. It's so horrible to talk about." "I won't," said her mother, seeing the tears in her daughter's eyes. "But one thing, my love, you promised me you would have no secrets from me. You won't?" "Never, Mamma, none," answered Kitty, flushing a little, and looking her mother straight in the face. "But there's no use in telling you anything, and if I wanted to, I don't know what to say or how. I don't know." No, she could not tell an untruth with those eyes, thought the mother, smiling at her agitation and happiness. The princess smiled, that what was taking place just now in her soul seemed to the poor child so immense and so important. End of chapter 12. Okay, chapter 12 is we get Kitty's mama and her fears and her thoughts and all of these things about Kitty and Kitty's eventual marriage. And she does not like Levin at all. He doesn't come from a family of high standing. He doesn't, he's not like rich. He's not in high society. He lives in the country with cattle. What? Um, and he just left. Like, he was there for a while and then just left. And Vronsky is the one that Mama wants to propose to Kitty and Kitty to marry, because he is from a high-standing family, and he's charming, and he's gorgeous, and all of these things, and he is the right match that will be able to take care of Kitty. And so we get that, and she's like, "I didn't really feel like I had to worry for my other daughters, but for Kitty, I'm worried." And one of the daughters is Daria, who is the wife of Stepan. So, there you go. Everybody's connected. I'm gonna have a web by the end of this of how everybody's connected, and I feel like it's gonna look more and more like a conspiracy theorist murder board. With like string connecting everybody together. That's what I feel like is gonna happen. All right. Chapter 13. After dinner, and till the beginning of the evening, Kitty was feeling a sensation akin to the sensation of a young man before a battle. Her heart throbbed violently, and her thoughts would not rest on anything. She felt that this evening, when they would both meet for the first time, would be a turning point in her life. And she was continually picturing them to herself, at one moment each separately, and then both together. When she mused on the past, she dwelt with pleasure, with tenderness, on the memories of her relations with Levin. The memories of childhood and of Levin's friendship with her dead brother gave a special poetic charm to her relations with him. His love for her, of which she felt certain, was flattering and delightful to her, and it was pleasant for her to think of Levin. In her memories of Vronsky, there always entered a certain element of awkwardness. Though she was in the highest degree well-bred and at ease, as though there were some false note, not in Vronsky, he was very simple and nice, but in herself, while with Levin she felt perfectly simple and clear. But, on the other hand, directly she thought of the future with Vronsky, there arose before her a perspective of brilliant happiness. With Levin, the future seemed misty. When she went upstairs to dress and looked into the looking-glass, she noticed with joy that it was one of her good days, and that she was in complete possession of all her forces. She needed this so for what lay before her. She was conscious of external composure and free grace in her movements. At 7:30, she had only just gone down into the drawing-room when the footman announced, "Konstantin Dmitrievitch Levin." The princess was still in her room, and the prince had not come in. So it is to be, thought Kitty, and all the blood seemed to rush to her heart. She was horrified at her paleness as she glanced into the looking-glass. At that moment she knew, beyond doubt, that he had come early on purpose to find her alone and to make her an offer. And only then, for the first time, the whole thing presented itself in a new, different aspect. Only then she realized that the question did not affect her only, with whom she would be happy and whom she loved, but that she would have that moment to wound a man whom she liked, and to wound him cruelly. What for? Because he, dear fellow, loved her, was in love with her. But there was no help for it. So it must be. So it would have to be. My God, shall I myself really have to say it to him? She thought. Can I tell him I don't love him? That will be a lie. What am I to say to him? That I love someone else? No, that's impossible. I'm going away. I'm going away. She had reached the door when she heard his step. No, it's not honest. What have I to be afraid of? I have done nothing wrong. What is it to be? What is to be will be. I'll tell the truth. And with him one can't be ill at ease. Oh, here he is, she said to herself, seeing his powerful, shy figure with his shining eyes fixed on her. She looked straight into his face, as though imploring him to spare her, and gave her hand. It's not time yet. I think I'm too early, he said, glancing round the empty drawing-room. When he saw that his expectations were realized, that there was nothing to prevent him from speaking, his face became gloomy. "Oh, no," said Kitty, and sat down at the table. "But this is just what I wanted, to find you alone," he began, not sitting down and not looking at her, so as not to lose courage. "Mamma will be down directly. She was very much tired yesterday." She walked on, not knowing what her lips were uttering and not taking her supplicating and caressing eyes off him. He glanced at her. She blushed and ceased speaking. "I told you I did not know whether I should be here long, that it depended on you." She dropped her head lower and lower, not knowing herself what answer she should make to what was coming. "That it depended on you," he repeated. I meant to say, I came for this, to be my wife," he brought out, not knowing what he was saying, but feeling that the most terrible thing was said. He stopped short and looked at her. She was breathing heavy, not looking at him. She was feeling ecstasy. Her soul was flooded with happiness. She had never anticipated that the utterance of love would produce such a powerful effect on her, but it lasted only an instant. She remembered Vronsky. She lifted her clear, truthful eyes, and seeing his desperate face, she answered hastily, "That cannot be. Forgive me?" A moment ago, and how close she had been to him, of what importance in his life, and how aloof and remote from him she had become now. "It was bound to be so," he said, not looking at her. She bowed, and was meaning to retreat. End of chapter 13. My gosh. Okay, so we start with Kitty, and she is getting ready, and she knows, or she suspects, that Levin is going to come and ask for her hand. But there's Vronsky. And so she's going back and forth and being like, okay, well, Vronsky is like a good man and like great on paper, but when we're together, it's like a little awkward. And Levin, love being with him. He's great. We always have a great time. There's nothing awkward. But on paper, he is not amazing. And so she's going back and forth and she's like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. I don't really know what I'm going to say. Like, what's the right answer? And then Levin shows up, and he shows up early, intentionally, and they both know that it's intentional. He shows up so that it is just him and Kitty, and he very awkwardly just kind of blurts out marriage. Like, it's not really even a proposal. He's just like, it depends on how long I'm gonna be here. I said that because, marriage. Like, that's kind of what it was like, and it's just so awkward and uncomfortable, and, like, the nervousness that he has is just so palpable. It's great. And Kitty, like, gets this, like, rush, because she's just so excited, and she's like, oh, he loves me. Like, the feeling of that is so great. And then she's like, sorry, no. And he's like, yep, that was to be expected. And then she bows, and that's the end of the chapter. Marriage. I'm still super loving the writing. I'm loving this book. I don't know why, but I just thought, like, big, chunky Russian book, like, it's not going to be relevant to today. It definitely is. And it's just going to be so dry. And it's not. Like, I'm having a good time. There's like humor in it, and there's just complex situations that are wonderful and delicious. It's so good. It's so good. And we're only 6% in. We have so much more to go, which is why I'm like, I'm glad that I'm enjoying this. Chapter 14. But at that very moment, the princess came in. There was a look of horror on her face when she saw them alone and their disturbed faces. Levin bowed to her and said nothing. Kitty did not speak nor lift her eyes. Thank God she has refused him, thought the mother, and her face lighted up with the habitual smile with which she greeted her guests on Thursdays. She sat down and began questioning Levin about his life in the country. He sat down again, waiting for other visitors to arrive, in order to retreat unnoticed. 5 minutes later, there came in a friend of Kitty's, married the preceding winter, Countess Nordston. She was a thin, sallow, sickly, and nervous woman with brilliant black eyes. She was fond of Kitty, and her affection for her showed itself, as the affection of married women for girls always does, in the desire to make a match for Kitty after her own ideal married happiness. She wanted her to marry Vronsky. Levin she had often met at the Shtcherbatskoys early in the winter, and she had always disliked him. Her invariable and favorite pursuit, when they met, consisted of making fun of him. I do not like it when he looks down at me from the height of his grandeur, or breaks off his learned conversation with me because I'm a fool, or is condescending to me. I like that so, to see him condescending. I'm so glad he can't bear me, she used to say of him. She was right, for Levin actually could not bear her, and despised her for what she was proud of and regarded as a fine characteristic, her nervousness, her delicate contempt and indifference for everything coarse and earthly. The Countess Nordsten and Levin got into that relation with one another not seldom seen in society, when two persons, who remain externally on friendly terms, despise each other to such a degree that they cannot even take each other seriously, and cannot even be offended by each other. The Countess Nordsten pounced upon Levin at once. "Ah, Konstantin Dmitrievitch, so you've come back to our corrupt Babylon," she said, giving him her tiny yellow hand and recalling what he had chanced to say early in the winter, that Moscow was a Babylon. "Come, is Babylon reformed, or have you degenerated?" she added, glancing with a simper at Kitty. "It's very flattering for me, Countess, that you remember my words so well," responded Levin, who had succeeded in recovering his composure, and at once from habit dropped into his tone of joking hostility to the Countess Nordsten. "They must certainly make a great impression on you." "Oh, I should think so. I always note them all down. Well, Kitty, have you been skating again?" And she began talking to Kitty. Awkward as it was for Levin to withdraw now, it would still have been easier for him to perpetrate this awkwardness than to remain all the evening and see Kitty, who glanced at him now and then and avoided his eyes. He was on the point of getting up when the princess, noticing that he was silent, addressed him. "Shall you be long in Moscow? You're busy with the district council, though, aren't you, and can't be away for long?" "No, Princess, I'm no longer a member of the council," he said. "I have come up for a few days." "There's something the matter with him." "There's something the matter with him." Wrong voice, thought Countess Nordsten, glancing at his stern, serious face. "He isn't in his old argumentative mood. But I'll draw him out. I do love making a fool of him before Kitty, and I'll do it." "Konstantin Dmitrievitch," she said to him, "do explain to me, please. What's the meaning of it? You know all about such things. At home in our village of Kaluga, all the peasants and all the women have drunk up all they possessed, and now they can't pay us any rent. What's the meaning of that? You always praise the peasants so." At that moment, another lady came into the room, and Levin got up. "Excuse me, Countess, but I really know nothing about it and can't tell you anything," he said, and looked round at the officer who came in behind the lady. That must be Vronsky, thought Levin, and, to be sure of it, glanced at Kitty. She had already had time to look at Vronsky and looked round at Levin, and simply from the look in her eyes that grew unconsciously brighter, Levin knew that she loved that man, knew it as surely as if she had told him so in words. But what sort of man was he? Now, whether for good or for ill, Levin could not choose but remain. He must find out what the man was like whom she loved. There are people who, on meeting a successful rival, no matter in what, are at once disposed to turn their backs on everything good in him, and to see only what is bad. There are people, on the other hand, who desire above all to find in that lucky rival the qualities by which he has outstripped them, and seek with a throbbing ache at heart only what is good. Levin belonged to the second class, but he had no difficulty in finding what was good and attractive in Vronsky. It was apparent at the first glance. Vronsky was a squarely built, dark man, not very tall, with a good-humored, handsome face and exceedingly calm and resolute face. Everything about his face and figure, from his short cropped black hair and freshly shaven chin down to his loosely fitting, brand new uniform, was simple, and at the same time elegant. Making way for the lady who had come in, Vronsky went up to the princess, and then to Kitty. As he approached her, his beautiful eyes shone with a specially tender light, and with a faint, happy, and modestly triumphant smile. So it seemed to Levin, bowing carefully and respectfully over her. He held out his small, broad hand to her. Greeting and saying a few words to everyone, he sat down without once glancing at Levin, who had never taken his eyes off him. "Let me introduce you," said the princess, indicating Levin. "Konstantin Dmitrievitch Levin, Count Alexei Kirillevich Vronsky." Vronsky got up and, looking cordially at Levin, shook hands with him. "I believe I was to have dined with you this winter," he said, smiling, his simple and open smile, "but you had unexpectedly left for the country." "Konstantin Dmitrievitch despises and hates town and us townspeople," said Countess Nordston. "My words must make a deep impression on you, since you remember them so well," said Levin, and suddenly conscious that he had said just the same thing before, he reddened. Vronsky looked at Levin and Countess Nordston and smiled. "Are you always in the country?" he inquired. "I should think it must be dull in the winter." "It's not dull if one has work to do. Besides, one's not dull by oneself," Levin replied abruptly. "Oh, I'm fond of the country," said Vronsky, noticing, and affecting not to notice, Levin's tone. "But I hope, Count, you would not consent to live in the country always," said Countess Nordston. "I don't know. I have never tried it for long. I experienced an odd feeling once," he went on. "I never longed so for the country, Russian country, with vast shoes and peasants, as when I was spending a winter with my mother in Nice. Nice itself is dull enough, you know, and indeed Naples and Sorrento are only pleasant for a short time. And it's just there that Russia comes back to me most vividly, and especially the country. It's as though—" He talked on, addressing both Kitty and Levin, turning his serene, friendly eyes from one to the other, and saying obviously just what came into his head. Noticing that Countess Nordston wanted to say something, he stopped short without finishing what he had begun and listened attentively to her. The conversation did not flag for an instant, so that the princess, who always kept in reserve, in case a subject should be lacking, two heavy guns, the relative advantages of classical and of modern education, and universal military service, had not to move out either of them, while Countess Nordston had not a chance of chaffing Levin. Levin wanted to, and could not, take part in the general conversation, saying to himself every instant, "Now go." He still did not go, as though waiting for something. The conversation fell upon table-turning and spirits, and Countess Nordston, who believed in spiritualism, began to describe the marvels she had seen. "Ah, Countess, you really must take me. For pity's sake, do take me to see them. I have never seen anything extraordinary, though I am always on the lookout for it everywhere," said Vronsky, smiling. "Very well. Next Saturday," answered Countess Nordston. "But you, Konstantin Dmitrievitch, do you believe in it?" she asked Levin. "Why do you ask me?" You know what I shall say. But I want to hear your opinion. My opinion, answered Levin, is only that this table-turning simply proves that educated society, so-called, is no higher than the peasants. They believe in the evil eye and in witchcraft and omens, while we... Okay, then. You don't believe in it? I can't believe in it, Countess. But if I've seen it myself... The peasant women, too, tell us they have seen goblins. Then you think I tell a lie? And she laughed a mirthless laugh. Oh no, Masha. Konstantin Dmitrievich said he could not believe in it, said Kitty, blushing for Levin. And Levin saw this, and still more exasperated, would have answered. But Vronsky, with his bright, frank smile, rushed to the support of the conversation, which was threatening to become disagreeable. You do not admit the conceivability at all, he queried. But why not? We admit the existence of electricity, of which we know nothing. Why should there not be some new force, still unknown to us, which... When electricity was discovered, Levin interrupted hurriedly, it was only the phenomenon that was discovered, and it was unknown from what it proceeded and what were its effects, and ages passed before its applications were conceived. But the spiritualists have begun with tables writing for them, and spirits appearing to them, and have only later started saying that it is an unknown force. Vronsky listened attentively to Levin, as he always did listen, obviously interested in his words. Yes, but the spiritualists say we don't know at present what this force is. But there is a force, and these are the conditions in which it acts. Let the scientific men find out what the force consists in. No, I don't see why there should not be a new force, if it... Why? Because with electricity, Levin interrupted again, every time you rub tar against wool, a recognized phenomenon is manifested. But in this case, it does not happen every time, and so it follows it is not a natural phenomenon. Feeling probably that the conversation was taking a tone too serious for a drawing room, Vronsky made no rejoinder, but by way of trying to change the conversation, he smiled brightly and turned to the ladies. Let us try at once, Countess, he said, but Levin would finish saying what he thought. I think, he went on, that this attempt of the spiritualists to explain their marvels as some sort of new natural force is most futile. They boldly talk of spiritual force, and then try to subject it to material experiment. Everyone was waiting for him to finish, and he felt it. And I think you would be a first-rate medium, said Countess Nordström. There's something enthusiastic in you. Levin opened his mouth, was about to say something, reddened, and said nothing. Do let us try table-turning at once, please, said Vronsky. Princess, will you allow it? And Vronsky stood up, looking for a little table. Kitty got up to fetch a table, and as she passed, her eyes met Levin's. She felt for him with her whole heart, the more because she was pitying him for suffering of which she was herself the cause. If you can forgive me, said her eyes. I am so happy. I hate them all, and you, and myself, his eyes responded, and he took up his hat. But he was not destined to escape. Just as they were arranging themselves round the table, and Levin was on the point of retiring, the old prince came in, and after greeting the ladies, addressed Levin. Ah, he began joyously. Been here long, my boy? I didn't even know you were in town. Very glad to see you. The old prince embraced Levin, and talking to him did not observe Vronsky, who had risen and was serenely waiting till the prince should turn to him. Kitty felt how distasteful her father's warmth was to Levin after what had happened. She saw, too, how coldly her father responded at last to Vronsky's bow, and how Vronsky looked with amiable perplexity at her father, as though trying and failing to understand how and why anyone could be hostilely disposed towards him, and she flushed. Prince, let us have Konstantin Dmitrievich, said Countess Nordstrand. We want to try an experiment. What experiment? Table turning? Well, you must excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, but to my mind it is better fun to play the ring game, said the old prince, looking at Vronsky and guessing that it had been his suggestion. There's some sense in that, anyway. Vronsky looked wonderingly at the prince with his resolute eyes, and, with a faint smile, began immediately talking to Countess Nordston of the great ball that was to come off next week. I hope you will be there, he said to Kitty. As soon as the old prince turned away from him, Levin went out unnoticed, and the last impression he carried away with him of that evening was the smiling, happy face of Kitty, answering Vronsky's inquiry about the ball. End of chapter 14. Okay, so this chapter is right after the awkwardness of Levin asking Kitty to be wed, and Kitty being like, no. Thank you, no. And so now people are starting to arrive. Mama comes downstairs and she notes the awkwardness and realizes by reading the room that he had asked her and Kitty had said no. And so that kind of brings her joy and satisfaction. And people start joining the room. And this whole time, Levin is trying to leave because he's uncomfortable, because he needs to, just be with himself for a while, and he doesn't want to pretend like everything is okay after he was just denied the proposal. But that's not happening. People keep drawing him into conversation. The Countess Nordston, who loves arguing with him. The Vronsky shows up, and even Levin is like, okay, he's kind of gorgeous, and I understand. And he also looks at Kitty and sees that she is in fact in love with him. So he admits defeat to that as well. And he just keeps getting drawn into conversations, and he's just trying to pretend like everything's fine, but is just waiting for the moment when there's so many people that he can just like sneak out. And it does eventually happen. Whew. So we'll be here for a while, which is great because I am really enjoying it. I'm loving the characters. I'm loving all of the setup that we're going through, but it doesn't feel like setup. Like it feels very much like we are still getting actiony things without it being like, this is this person, and they are born to be, this way, or whatever it is. I like it. And with each new character, Tolstoy is doing such a good job of introducing them and giving them the immediate characteristic with their doubts, with their praises, with their hopes, with their dreams, all of these things. And even if we as the reader don't necessarily know all of it, we know that they are such complex and built up characters that do have all of these things, and that is just beautiful. But that's going to be where we end tonight. Thank you all so much for being here, for all of your generosity. It has been a pleasure and a half, maybe two pleasures. No, it's been two pleasures. That's it. We did it. We'll continue next week right where we left off. But thank you. Thank you so much. As always, whether you lurk, whether you chat, I 1000% appreciate you. And I 1000% appreciate your support. If I don't see you next time, I hope to see you very soon. Goodbye.